Welcome to the IBM video series on thought leadership. I'm your host, Emily Fontaine. Joining me today is Dan Prieto, a Vice President and Practice Leader for Strategy and Innovation. Dan co-authored a paper, Strategies to Cut Costs and Improve Performance, which he'll be speaking about today. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for having me.
Dan, as you know, the CEO study was recently released. I was hoping you could give us a little bit of insight and highlight some points from it.
As you know, every 2 years, IBM conducts the CEO study. It's the only study of its kind out there in the world today. So this year, we interviewed face-to-face over 1,500 CEOs around the globe. Now, in the United States, we had significant representation, and we found some very compelling findings from the study in the United States when we talked to federal government leaders. The biggest finding, and I think the most important finding, is that government leaders don't feel prepared to deal with the complexity that they're facing today. 94% of federal leaders feel that the world that they're going to face is more volatile, it is more complex, and at the same time, they're worried about their human capital, they're worried about their budgets, and they're worried about how they manage their IT. At the same time, only 36% of those leaders feel prepared to deal with it. So they're anxious, they're worried. And I think that's really where IBM can come help to address what we call the complexity gap. That gap between the change they see and the disruption they see and their ability to face it. That gap in the United States federal sector is 58%. It is 2 times higher than anywhere else in the CEO study. And so we took those findings and we applied it very directly to this paper about restoring fiscal balance in this country. The 7 specific initiatives that Deborah talked about to reduce costs and improve performance, those really indicate a need for leadership. And that was the other major finding of the paper, that the most important characteristic that our federal leaders need today is leadership with creativity, with innovation, in order to address that complexity gap.
Dan, how do we do it more effectively and how do we do it better?
That's a great question, Emily, and it's basically the same question that Vivek Kundra, the federal CIO and Chief Performance Officer, asked us in a recent meeting. He said the ideas in the paper are great, but how do you get it done in reality? Now let's take IT optimization as an example. That is one of the places we identify in the paper where we believe you're going to get the greatest amount of these operating savings by adopting commercial best practices. Agencies are required today to do what we call an enterprise architecture. That means they need to define all the IT they currently have in an as-is state and look at where they need to be from a mission perspective. How does the IT support the overall business mission? And based on that, they need to get from an as-is state to a to-be state. But if you look at it closely, most of the as-is definitions of what people actually own and have, what's in their networks, what applications do they have, what software do they run, they're based on efforts that could be much more scientific and precise. And I think that's something that IBM can really bring to the table. Through a combination of our software assets and our knowledge of IT and our consulting services, we can much more quickly provide for federal executives a very clear statement of what they currently possess that is much more based on reality as opposed to guesswork. And so based on that, we believe that one can be much more effective at improving performance and cost on the IT side. I think the biggest thing is leadership and creative leadership. I think that our leaders in the federal government today are committed to making government perform better. At the same time, if they watch the Sunday news shows, I'm sure they feel pretty much beat up all the time. And again, so much of this discussion about fiscal balance lies in the realm of politics. However, you have career civil servants in there, and as they look at this, I think they should feel empowered to take many of the ideas in the paper, put them to good use, and try to implement them with our help.
Dan, thank you very much for being here. Your insight was invaluable.
Terrific, Emily. Thanks.